and then at the national level by an NSO and a research organisation. We'll share experiences and learnings related to building trust in citizen science data from the UN, NSOs, academia and other organisations. And we really want this session to be interactive. We want to learn from you. Share your experiences and relate them to the citizen contributions in data. And we're going to save a good sort of 20 minutes at the end of the session for you to contribute to that session. So when we get there, please make sure that you say your name and your surname, and ideally please register on one of the official platforms so that we can credit your contribution. We're hoping to, or planning to, produce a paper of the outcomes of this meeting, and we'd like to approach you afterwards if you would like to contribute to that. Our speakers, to begin with, are Dilek, and I think I'm just going to hand the floor over to you, Dilek.
Thank you, Claudia, and thank you all for joining us today. It's wonderful to be here. It's the last sessions, I guess, parallel sessions of the day. My name is Dilek Freisel. I'm a research scholar at the International Institute for Applied Systems Analysis. I'm also the managing director of the newly established Citizen Science Global Partnership, which I will be talking about shortly. But let me start with a scene-setting exercise. I'd like to ask you all in the room if you are familiar with the term citizen science, or how many of you have heard the term citizen science? Just hands, please, raising hands, before coming to this session. Okay, it's a good proportion. Citizen-generated data? Great. Crowdsourcing? It's all the same people. You've heard all the terms. That's really great. That's really great. Okay, so I guess you know where I'm trying to get at with this exercise. I'm just trying to tell you that there are various terms to define citizen engagement in research activities, and citizen science is one of them. In our work at IIASA, at the Citizen Science Global Partnership, and as well as in this very session, we use citizen science as an umbrella term in an inclusive way to describe all these diverse set of activities and methodologies and many other ways of doing citizen engagement activities. So we define citizen science generically as public participation in scientific research and knowledge production. So the reason why there are so many different terms available out there is because they all come into existence in different contexts. For example, citizen-generated data is mostly related to civil society organizations and coming from grassroots initiatives. As you may have thought, like citizen science is mostly because of the science, more academia relevant and oriented, right? But as said, we define really citizen science in a very inclusive way. And these are some activities of citizen science from Citizen Science Project. One of the oldest examples, bird monitoring, for instance, or beach cleanups, they are all fall in under the umbrella of citizen science. So let me give you a little bit background on citizen science contributions to SDG monitoring. So at IIASA, we have done a study in about 2 years ago to understand the contributions of citizen science data to SDG monitoring. And we looked at the indicators, metadata, and methodologies of all of them, about 231. And then we looked at the citizen science initiatives that are taking place at the local, national, global, regional scales. And we found that citizen science data can actually contribute to 33% of the SDG indicators. And this is a huge potential what we're talking about here. But we wanted to know whether actually these are really applicable on the ground. Yeah, research shows that, but can we actually implement it on the ground? So we partnered up with the Ghana Statistical Service, Environmental Protection Agency in Ghana, as well as, I'm going to highlight one of them, citizen science networks in the country, in Ghana, Smart Nature Freak Youth Volunteers Foundation, our colleagues. You see some of the data collection activities from them on the slide. And then many other great partners on the project, including the custodian agency for that particular indicator, UNEP. And we try to understand whether we can leverage already existing citizen science data for the monitoring of the indicator 14.1.1b on plastic debris density, in a more friendly term, beach litter. And in the end, the success of the project was that Ghana has become the first country to report to, on the SDG indicator 14.1.1b, and as well as to integrate these data into their official statistics. And this was also the first country to use citizen science data for this reporting of this particular indicator. And the results are also feeding into Ghana's integrated coastal and marine management policy, so it has also a policy outcome. But one of the most important things is we really managed to leverage very local level citizen science data that are happening at the community level with the global monitoring processes. So this is for us is very important. So we've went through a 3-stage data validation process, as well as we produced a checklist, and this is coming in a scientific paper. If you're interested, please find me after the session. I'm happy to share all the information with you. But let me just talk a little bit about how we can build trust in citizen science data from an academia perspective, right? Because we will all talk about it today. This is the point of the session. It is really important to ensure inclusiveness through meaningful participation of all stakeholders, all the actors, if you want to really build trust among all these diverse stakeholders. This is because, and we can only achieve this actually by listening and understanding their concerns, motivations, and why they come around the table, because everybody is coming around the table with different motivations and concerns. We really need to understand this in order to be able to build trust and common goals around these initiatives, right? And we can only do that by creating the time and space for all these actors to meet and to really share everything that they have, why they are coming around this table. And what is really important is being transparent about citizen science results and methodologies, and especially how these methodologies are implemented on the ground by these citizen science networks. So we're not trying to oversell citizen science. It will have a lot of issues, it will have limitations, but we really need to be open and transparent about these limitations so that we can address these limitations for the future. And one of the most important things is the ethics. So when we talk about trust in citizen science data, we're always looking at it from a data quality perspective, whether we can build actually trust by the government agencies or policymakers. But we're never looking at it from a citizen perspective. So citizens and communities are no free labor. They are not there to close government data gaps. This is not the main concern. So we really always need to keep that in mind, and they should receive a shared benefit from participating in these activities. And this could be in the form of achieving change that they want in their own communities. And this connects us to the Citizen Science Global Partnership. It's a network of networks that aims to advance citizen science for a sustainable world. And one of the goals that we have in the Citizen Science Global Partnership is to really bring this community together and help them really link their initiatives with policy and action. So one of the flagship initiatives of the Citizen Science Global Partnership is YOMA, and YOMA is for youth. It's led by UNICEF, and we're part of it, and we're trying to integrate citizen science approaches to the YOMA project. The aim of YOMA is to impact about more than 100 million youth around the world through technology and innovation, and citizen science will become part of this process. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you. So we're now going to head into our presentations from speakers. Our first speaker is Steve McFeely, Director of Data and Analytics from WHO, who will then be followed by Marina. Ooh, I've messed my paper up. Apologies. Governance Statistics Specialist at the UN Development Programme, followed by Pei Ling, who's Chief Scientist at the International Digital Health and AI Research Collaborative, followed by Andrea, Deputy Director of Geographical and Environmental Information Assessment at the National Institute of Statistics and Geography of Mexico. I'm going to be looking closely. I'm going to sit down here. Steve, I'm going to invite you to the podium. You have 5 minutes. I will be waving at you.
Thanks, Claudia. Hi, everybody. Good afternoon, and thanks for coming to the last session. So we're talking about trust. So there's many dimensions to trust. There's many different sides to trust. So I want to talk about a few. So just to cast back in history a bit, back in the 60s, late 50s, Nordic countries started using administrative data. And within the statistical community globally, this was viewed as heresy. There was great consternation. A lot of people were very, very upset. And yet now, at a conference like this, we just take it for granted. You don't hear anybody talking about it using administrative data with shock in their voices. So I think what we're talking about here is just the next evolution in official statistics. This is a new data source, or it's what we're considering a new data source because we've been introduced to it. And at the moment, there's some viewing this as heresy. There's some getting very excited about this. And this is natural. This is change management in action. So this is really what we're talking about. As a statistician, I like to think I have a balanced view. So on one hand, I want to be open-minded. But on the other hand, I'm naturally skeptical and I want to be reassured about certain things. So in particular, what do I want to be reassured about? One is scalability. From what, a lot of citizen science, when you read it, tends to be quite local. So can we scale it to the region, to the nation? Is it sustainable? Is this, are these well-intentioned actions, but maybe aren't going to be funded long-term? They'll run out of energy. And obviously, as official statisticians, one of our primary preoccupations is time series. So can it contribute to time series? And crucially, is it impartial? Do the people producing these statistics have skin in the game? Are they going to produce robust quality statistics? But obviously, on the other hand, there's huge potential. I mean, this is untapped, not only data, but intellectual capital that we can harness. And the benefits then of kind of helping us to democratize statistics and communicate statistics is obviously enormous. So this is what I think, and I think I represent many official statisticians. This is the kind of dilemma that we're weighing up. Recently, I've commissioned a paper working with DLEC, looking at SDG 3 indicators, trying to see what is the potential from a WHO perspective. What can citizen science do? Because I don't know the answer, so that's what we've been doing, is trying to identify opportunities. But crucially, one of the roles of that paper too is to domesticate the issue within WHO, because when we got the feedback, I think it was clear some people were kind of enthusiastic and there was other people clearly were much less so. And again, this is part of the change management that we're discussing. So just to finish up, there's two issues I want to talk about, which is really the difference between co-production and co-creation. And this is very important within the trust discussion as well. So co-production, or sorry, let's start with co-creation. This is when citizen science might approach a statistical office or an international organization and say, we would like to contribute something, we would like to work with you in the design of an indicator, and we work together from the very beginning. That obviously facilitates trust between the partners. It has a role, and it's a very good model. But I don't think citizen science should be trapped into this model only, because I think citizen science offers huge opportunity in the co-production model too, which is where they produce indicators independent of state, independent of the official statistics office. And there are many examples we can think of where there's a really valuable role that they can play. And that fosters a different type of trust, which is trust with the community. Because we know sometimes state apparatus can be captured, and there are times when we have to question the veracity and the accuracy of some of the indicators we see produced by state agencies. So with that, I'll stop. I just want to say there's enormous potential here, and this is a really exciting departure for official statistics. Thank you.
Hi, I'll start with responding to Dilek's question. What is citizen science? And if I go back, I think 8 months or 9 months, my answer is I don't know. Today is a little bit different, but not very far from my starting point a few months ago. So as UNDP, what I'll speak is mostly the UNDP experience, and also picking up what Steve said. At some point we had, I remember when they started the discussion on big data, and I asked, okay, there's a big data, what's the small data? I had no idea what big data is. There's no new concept we had, no idea, we did not understand. The same as the domains, the gender statistics, now governance statistics, that at some point were very inspirational phase. But we go to defining it to have a better understanding of what they are. Maybe we have to understand also how it can help create the evidence and create engagement. They like spoke of the definition, but now we have to understand a little bit better. So for UNDP, because we did not know, and because we're very committed on trying, a few months ago, we decided, okay, so because we have at least a pilot to see how it works. And we decided to do it with one of our indicators that we are custodian, which is 1662. Satisfaction, I know everyone, I say 1662, everyone knows exactly which indicator it is, no? Which is satisfaction of public services. And we chose this indicator specifically because we believe that one that related most, well, what is in sciences. It is the satisfaction, it is directly the contribution or the assessment of our populations to what the government is doing, how it's delivering the service. It is an experience-based indicator, which is a little bit different from the indicators that DLAC has presented. We already have in maritime, we have another type of indicator, but perception indicator, we really did not know very well how it was going to go. So we decided to initiate understanding this process. And for us to understand this process and to make it as strong as possible, it meant first to engage directly with the NSO because the end goal is something that is going to enter the national statistical systems. In this case was Ghana again. They're the ones leading. The second part is that it is as criticized as much as possible so we can identify the weakness, if there are weakness, and improve it. So in the very early stage, we have evolved with 5 other institutions, which is the NSOs of Mexico, Colombia, Denmark, Moldova, Kazakhstan. So they can see the experience from Ghana and see what we can do, and as we progress as well at the end, what might not be going very well, or we need to scratch and start from zero. But it is a process that we are ready to invest, and we're ready to learn. So the question is what 2 of the common questions we have, how are we going to integrate, how is going to be inserted in official statistics? It's not a matter a lot of how, is more when. When are we ready to insert in the official statistics? And we need to learn a little bit more. We need to explain a little bit more what it is exactly. We need to document our success and, even more importantly, document our failures. And at some point, we'll have fully integrated in official statistics. And it is this documenting, is this sharing the experience that will help us have the trust necessary to move it forward, and also that whatever results they come, they can be inserted on the public decisions. And I see her eyeing the time. Time is up. Okay, that was actually my last sentence. Okay, thank you so much.
Well, now I'm going to talk to you about how can we build trust in citizen science data to inform policy decision making from the perspective of the national statistics and mapping organizations, such as the National Institute of Statistics and Geography from Mexico, INEGI. Well, citizen science as a generation of official data is through conserved and functional information procedures with a long-term perspective make it possible to mediation the lack of updated and accurate and spatial data. Thus, INEGI, as the main provider of official information in Mexico,
is concerned about its usability and how to institutionalize citizen science in the production of official data, without losing the tools that already exist in the data produced by the institute. Therefore, in 2021, at INEGI, together with the University of Arizona and the Pan American Institute of Geographic and History, we conducted a research study which was published in February of this year in the journal Frontiers, titled Citizen Science Interaction with Official Geospatial Information Case Studies from Mexico. Through the series of qualitative interviews with strategic actors from Mexican public institution, non-governmental organization, and the academy. We identify 6 key elements to institutionalize citizen science in the production of spatial information, which are one, adoption of the citizen science process by the organization depends on its ability to provide a response to needs, as well as the usefulness of the data produced for political decision making, to the introduction of citizen science method within the organization relies on the understand of role on their capacity to achieve change within the institution. That is change of paradigms and interest in the use of non-conventional methods. 3, dissemination of ideas within an organization is strategic to achieve adoption. That is to share the progress of projects that propose new analyzed methodologies or experimental projects. 4, participatory data integration models must fit into the existing data system to make a clear contribution. That is, in a specific process such as collection, validation, training, etc. 5, project workflow must be integrated quickly into organizational functions, allowing the project to have planning, time allocation, resource allocation, etc. And 6, the benefit of citizen science should be seen beyond the scale of the projects. However, the quality of the data products is the main concern related to citizen science, followed by trust. It is known that some citizen science projects are open to editing existing data, which may generate additional concerns such as vandalism by voluntary or involuntary deletion, or data or conflict or representation and criteria about certain data and their attribute. In the case of INEGI, its responsibility to provide data of absolute quality and veracity in the country does not allow any risk that could represent the integration of the contribution of the citizen science to the official information. So how to build trust in citizen science data from INEGI experience of perspective? Well, to increase use confidence, the risks of vandalism can be reduced by a series of methods of evaluation of contribution. That is, mechanisms that allow automated alerts to cartographic areas about new edits, editing tools in permanent development, checking use profiles, marking changes to be checked one by one, being able to contact authors if it's necessary, and deciding whether the edit is reverted, conserved, or accepted. In this sense, the benefits of the citizen science in the production of official data are multiple, but the institution must be able to find mechanisms to generate trust in the use, or in the cases of INEGI, mechanisms to maintain the existing trust. That's
Hi, everyone. So, greetings from, oh, so that's already my slide. Okay. So we have heard many definitions of citizen science, and I thought, what do the citizens really think? And maybe let's have a look at what they think. So at IDEA, what we did was we actually interviewed around 3,000 citizens from 9 LMIC countries and really asked them, when we talk about the word citizen science, what comes to mind? And these are really the words that popped up. I mean, of course, science and citizen is there, but you see that people start talking about community, start talking about awareness, people, participation, knowledge, and realize that data is not mentioned here. And I think this gives us a sense of direction where we should be headed. Very little. So at IDEA, we think that, and I think that's also what Dilek was talking about. We have to involve the citizens in more than just being data providers. We have to engage them throughout that research life cycle. So right from the outset, problem definition to data curation, modeling, interpretation, and communication. And then at IDEA, we're actually working on exploring how do we create that infrastructure, both analog and digital, and that enabling environment for citizens to participate in digital health and AI research for health. So I would like to talk on one of the examples that we're working on, and that's really on participatory modeling. So as you know, models are typically seen as black boxes. We don't really know what's going on within that box. The idea here is that by bringing citizens' inputs and getting them to help us frame the assumptions and rules of the models, we can benefit from both the science of probability as well as the more qualitative wisdom of experience. So we can actually fine-tune our models better to very complex social situations. And at the same time, this process can help us collaborate with citizens in developing a shared understanding of the health problem in the first place, and also identifying novel data sources. So curation of the data sources with the citizens, as well as looking at how we can produce new data from the citizens. You can see here, but it's really at the bottom point. The last point is also having citizens take part in this process will actually help facilitate collective reasoning and enable them to play with alternative scenarios so that we can actually develop policies that could resonate better with them. So policies that are much trusted, accepted, and owned by the citizens. So this is something we have been working on in Kenya, Vietnam, and Brazil. So how do we build that agent-based model that could help us look at how to effectively manage resources during an infectious disease outbreak? So yeah, we just finished our interactive modeling workshops, and we are going on to develop role-playing games and building the agent-based models for simulations. So we were asked by Dilek to talk about how to build trust in citizen science data, and I think we need to stop thinking about citizens as just mere data providers. We actually have to start thinking about how to empower them to participate in that full spectrum of activities, because I believe that that process will help them find value in their own data, and then actually understand how their data can inform policy, and therefore trust the policies that have been informed by the data. And naturally, I think with each of this loop, the quality of the data will increase. So I started off with points from the citizens, so I'll end off with that as well. So in that same survey, we asked, what do you hope to gain through participating in citizen science activities? And again, here it's not about data sharing. There's nothing mentioned here, but what they want to see is to see the impact of their contribution, to get a basic understanding of science and research. And interestingly, they talk about collective problem-solving skills within the community. So I'll end here. Thank you.
So thank you so much to all of those wonderful speakers. I think we've heard a real kind of genuine openness and warmth from the agencies there to really learn more about citizen science data. And it's not necessarily about how, it's about when. This is change management and natural evolution. So a real warmth and openness to learn more and to build the trust there. And some great examples of how to build that trust, moving beyond, I loved what you were saying there, beyond citizens, not just as providers, but of active participants in this, and some great examples from INEGI there of the actual specific process flows to allow that quality assurance of the data within that. Do we have any clarifying questions from the audience before we move into the participatory session? Some clarifying questions for our panelists and the examples that they've shared. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Yeah, it's okay. So Serge Singvish, I'm the head of research at the United Nations University Institute in Macau. So just before, so thank you for all the contributions. It was very interesting to see your work. And so just before joining the Guangzhou, in fact, we organized, my institute organized another satellite event of this UN World Data Forum in Macau 2 days ago. And this satellite event was about data dilemmas. And I think this is also reflect what I see here, because the data dilemmas means that at the same time you can use data, or there are lots of benefits. You can hear the voices of the people that are usually not here. But also you have lots of problems you mentioned some of these problems, like ethical issues. Someone mentioned also the vandalism of data, and you can harm potentially marginalize also populations. So this is very important to deal with that. So if you want to build trust, because I think this session was about building trust, so how we solve first these data dilemmas, because they can be used both for benefits but also for impacting the people.
Thank you. I wonder if anyone from the panel like to respond. Perhaps I can take the microphone back on that point around ethical issues.
Well, just to quickly say, so Yang is in the audience. She mentioned at a session earlier, so the UN is beginning to work on a conceptual framework around the use of citizen science, and precisely to address all these issues is to define what it is, and also then to articulate how it might be used the proper way it should be. And for sure, I think that will take into account ethical as well as kind of purely statistical considerations, because I think that's really, really important. Like the whole issue of data governance is increasing. Everybody's talking about it now, and I think this framework will have to take that on board.
Thank you. Have we got any other clarifying questions? Yes, here at the back. And while we're waiting, please do be thinking about your own experiences of using citizen science data. Yes.
I am Swapnil Shekhar. I represent Sambodhi. It's a monitoring and evaluation and data consulting firm working in India and across two other. My question is essentially alludes to the topic of sustainability of platforms. From that perspective, are there examples where we have interwoven incentives towards it? For the reason I'm asking, individual level incentive is impossible in this kind of a situation. But when we look at community-based organizations working as agents or citizens to collect data, there can be mechanisms to incentivize that. And are there examples towards it? Because I haven't heard something like that, that's why.
Great, thank you. Perhaps we could take a few more reflections. Are there any other reflections in the audience? Thank you, yes. So here and then over here. If you keep your hand up, thank you.
Hi, thank you very much, and thank you for the presenters. Indeed, this is a new area. I'm a statistician and demographer. I'm from Vital Strategies in New York. This is interesting, but as a statistician and demographer, we have a lot of questions similar to what Steve and Marina expressed. We are looking at, how can we measure quality? I know the presenter from Mexico talked about trustworthiness of the data, but are there like specific measures on how to ensure quality of the citizens' data that can be used? And second one is, has it been tried elsewhere? I know you indicated that there's work in Ghana, but has it been tried elsewhere so that it can be regional representative? And can it be integrated into national data systems for routine generation, or should it, to begin with, should it be routinely generated so that it can provide information? And can it be institutionalized and sustained? So there are lots of these questions that, as a statistician, we ask ourselves before we can, trust and use the data. So it will be important to understand if this is, has been tried elsewhere and what are the issues that we can learn from. But I just want to thank the presenters for introducing us to the new source of data. And thanks very much.
Thank you very much. That's really exciting, actually. If we could bring the mic to the panelists first, just to answer that question, and then we'll go to the lady over here. Thank you. In particular, about have some of these been techniques and methodologies been tried elsewhere, and some of your reflections on measures of quality.
Thank you. Thank you, Claudia. I'll try to reflect on both, actually. I'll try with the examples, if there are other examples that we can basically look into. So the first presentation, or the first piece of work that I was talking about, when I said 33% of the SDG indicators can be monitored through citizen science data, we published this as a scientific paper, and we looked at a lot of citizen science initiatives, and we did a mapping exercise of these initiatives and the type of data that they produce to the SDG indicators, to each and every one of them. So I suggest you to, please contact me after the session. I'm happy to give you the results of this work. You will see a lot of examples. In the meantime, though, there are a lot of new examples that are appearing in other countries and other contexts. But I think in terms of the global data sets and the methodologies, there are a lot of initiatives. For instance, these beach cleanup initiatives, they produce global data sets that a lot of countries can basically look into and use it in their own context after going through the data validation process that we looked into. And there are a lot of global data sets from citizen science initiatives, for instance, water quality, indicator 6.3.2, where citizen science is very strong on. And I think we can talk a lot about other examples as well. I'm sure my colleagues here will be talking about other examples as well. And incentivizing citizen science is really about the context. Whether it's a community-based, local citizen science initiatives or global citizen science initiatives, we published a lot of papers related to that, and we even paid participants small payments through micropayments, and we asked them whether instead they would take this, or they would want an Amazon voucher, for instance, or they would want to be included in a scientific paper that we will produce through their data. And some of them chose, or actually most of them chose the last one. So I'm happy to share the results of that work as well, but that depends on your audience. So you really need to know your audience, what their needs are, what would make them happy, what would be shared benefits for them. I think there's no one size-fits-all answer for that. I'm sorry.
Thank you. Perhaps you could pass the mic down to your fellow panelists.
Yeah, just a quick comment on the quality. So in 2017, the UN published the first statistical quality assurance framework for international organizations, and that was based largely on what are called the national quality assurance frameworks. But in fact, more recently, we've just been reflecting, even though we published that assurance framework in 2017, already now we're looking at it and we're thinking it doesn't reflect maybe big data considerations. It certainly doesn't reflect GIS considerations. We realize now, talking to geographers, they conceptualize data quality in a different way to statisticians. And it certainly doesn't conceptualize kind of citizen science. And in fact, somebody made a very interesting comment that the existing quality assurance framework was written by statisticians for statisticians. And the comment was maybe the users would assess quality in a very different way to us. And it's something we need to think about. So even though the UN quality assurance framework is already only 5 or 6 years old, we're already looking at it and thinking, well, how are we going to start incorporating all of these new data sources and maybe trying to incorporate different perspectives? And that's going to be a difficult journey for us because, like I said, The existing one, I was very involved with writing it. It was written by me for people like me. And now we're going to have to think about writing it for people like you, which is a completely different job and a slightly daunting one.
There's something there about putting users at the heart of what we do, and it depends that quality assessment depends on the use, doesn't it? Please, though, I don't want to take the floor. I'm not sure your mic's on. Sorry,
Yeah.
Pili.
So I will move on to answer the incentive question. So if you think about social media, which is extracting tons of data from us all the time, when they set up that platform, the TikTok or Facebook or Instagram, they don't tell you that, oh, I'm collecting data from you, or I'm going to monitor your whatever online. But they make it fun, right? They make you see something, a value out of collecting data. They don't put collecting data as an incentive, but they say, okay, do you want to be part of a network? Do you want to show your pictures when you travel? So I think when we think about incentives, we should rethink that. We should have some kind of shift in our mindset. So going back to finding value in sharing their data, I think that's, so maybe the incentives could be trying to make them see how their data can actually impact on whatever course that we want to go after.
Thank you. Are there any further reflections? We'll take the comment from the lady down here, please.
Thank you. I'm Barbara Pernici from Politecnico di Milano, and I wanted to ask you about the trust. Basically, it was defined the trust on the product, so the results of the data being produced, or trust in the process, so the creation, production. But maybe we should also talk about the different roles that citizen science could have, like identifying areas where more granular data is needed, or where it is missing, and then start other actions, which is not the direct production of the data by the citizens themselves, but taking other types of actions where the trust is built because you are addressing a problem.
Hi, everyone. My name is David from UN Climate Change, and I've had, I think, bilateral discussions with some of you already. But just to say, as a statement of support, that I mean, citizen science, the role for the field that I work in, which is climate resilience, is extremely important because often nowadays, because we need very granular data sets with very specific information for on a local level, maybe sometimes on a sub-regional level. So what is happening in this one delta, which is very seldomly captured by official statistics appropriately. So we have some approximators that we can use, but not really good data. A lot of it nowadays is solved, unfortunately, by Earth observation data because it's freely available. Most of these companies offering the solution don't even tap into paid, but in the free distributed data, which is then very rarely on the granular level that it needs. And then they build flood prediction models on it or stuff like this without any validation from the ground. So I would like to just say here in support of I think that's where citizen science could really fill a gap in terms of complementing that data, and in terms of also what Steve just said, if there is some way to feed that even in through the UN system or the statistical offices by giving it a framework, that would be even more useful because then we can use the data even with more authoritatively. So thanks for that, and thanks for the insights.
Thank you. Do we have some questions from online?
I just want to add something on the quality assurance issue. I think it needs to be explored further. Someone who works with national statistics offices, the question we always get, of course, is around, quality. This idea of a citizen as a credible source of data and information. A lot of the traditional institutions still find it a hard sell, and I think on the topic like this, I'm just thinking, especially in the latest developments in the world like COVID-19, some of the skepticism on vaccines and all this was, people saying, I did my own research and I just don't believe in that, So are there some dangers, of elevating ordinary people as credible sources of data and information? And who is the guarantor of some sort of properly freeing to make sure that these dangers are kind of minimized? I think adding it to the person who raised the issue from an NSO, this is something I hear about all the time because I work with NSOs. So if maybe you could elaborate more on that.
Thank you. Yes, I've done my own research and it says this very, we had a question down this side of the room and then we'll come back to the panelists. I hope you're ready with some reflections on some of these points.
Thank you, everyone. My name is Yong Yimin. I'm from UN Statistical Division. I think, as Steve just mentioned, this year is a very exciting year for citizen data because this is a big step from the global community and at the Statistical Commission. The National Statistical Office acknowledge the importance of citizen data and gave us the mandate to set up a framework to work on this. And to establish a collaborate on citizen data, because we have been working together with partners, starting talking on this topic for many years, and we heard about the quality issue. Sustainability has been one of the pushback from a lot of national statistical office on to accept work together on citizen data. So this is really a great achievement at the global level. So it gave us a strong mandate to work together to establish the partnership. And in terms of the quality issue, I just wonder, because we are a statistician, we have a very rigorous quality in terms of look at the data, look at the representative data, and this is a lot of the questions that bring out when we look at the citizen data. But when we look at the data used, there's a different type of user data. Do we need the same standard quality in terms of data collection? And if we use it for advocacy, do we need to apply the same quality standard for users as the one, like when you use kind of census and standard household survey? And that's one question. Another thing is on citizen contribution data, they're not only data production agents, they can be involved in the whole data value chain. From the very beginning, what's the most important question that they can collect for these people that matter to us, so they can contribute from before the data start being collected. What's the most important questions? And also through the data collection and cycles and to engage them, because we heard about the sensitivity issue. Some people do not have trust, they would not contribute data. How the citizen can be involved to encourage this contribution to data collection, and then move to data analysis and data use. So the citizen involvement should be involved in the whole data value chain.
Oh, absolutely agree. Perhaps we can come back to some reflections here. Do you have a mic?
Just a very small, there's a lot of questions that I don't know the answer, so I will not attempt to answer them. But there's a word that I liked your question, if the citizens are a credible source. Was that the question? So for the indicator we were trying, the satisfaction of public services, and the indicator we're trying to assess is what has been delivered to the citizen if it responds to their standard, their aspiration. The indicator that no one is better than the citizen himself to respond. There are indicators that this really no one knows better than myself what is my expectation for education of my son. And so this is a very great value that it has. And we mentioned the vulnerable. I work mostly on surveys, so not on this, but there are parts that we cannot do very specialized surveys to very small segments of population or a very specific problem. And this is the huge, huge, great value that they have on this domain. And that's all I have.
Anyone else from the panel?
Maybe my reflection to this is, You guys are national statistical officers, statisticians. For you, data quality is very important. I'm a scientist. For me, it's as much important as it is to you. So I think I started this conversation within this data and statistics community just a couple of years ago, and we've been talking about the potential of citizen science. I think we really need to move this conversation from these generic contributions, because we already know, we all know that it's there, to really specific examples. Because when we talk about citizen science data and its data quality in general, it's a little bit difficult to identify, because there are really good, well-designed citizen science projects, but there may also be not well-designed citizen science projects that may not be actually helping us with their data quality. So there is good data, there's bad data, there's good statistics, there's bad statistics, there is good science, bad science, good citizen science, bad citizen science. So maybe we really need to start having these conversations on an individual basis, on a project-by-project basis. Thank you.
I have only one reflection, really, the gentleman here, and I take your point, but at the same time, if we can't trust citizens, then you've pretty much rubbished every household survey that we do. It's the same people who are answering them, so.
Okay, my reflection is that it is necessary, let's say, citizen science, and then O or O. Other ways, the project will be remain around. And maybe the next step is create frameworks by development or methods to mitigate the possible lack of quality.
Pilling, any final reflections from you?
Yeah, I think we talked a lot about partnerships here as well. And I think it's time to acknowledge that if we really want to truly advance these development goals and also science, we need to develop an equal partnership between us. We think we are the experts and the citizens, and we should see them as experts in their own right as well. Because like Mariana said, who is better to ask about the health of a person than the person, him or herself? So yeah, equality, yeah.
Thank you very much, panelists. I believe we are bang on time. Unless anyone from the audience has any further reflections that we would like to take. I think there's a really rich discussion there, but I think what you said, Dilek, about really needing to move this conversation onwards from the discussion on keeping falling back on quality. It feels like we're just kind of resting on a bit of a crutch, actually, and I like what you said. There are good statistics, bad statistics, good data, bad data, good science, bad science. So and scientists are just as rigorous as statisticians in this space. So I think moving forward, that quality framework for geospatial, for big data and citizen science will be really important. But I think what we'd really like from this session and from colleagues online is that if you've got further experience of actually sort of using or trying to implement and use citizen science or citizen data, to share with us your contributions, what's failed and what's worked for you, because we really want to gather those really specific examples so that we can take this conversation further. Thank you all very much. Unless Dilek, you would like a final word of reflection. No, thank you. Is that okay?